Welcome to this the most untidy location in my garden. As you can see, I've had some doing some garden work at the moment, cut some trees back. But in this untidy corner of the garden, I'm just using some old pieces of dried wood. This is a piece of Australian hardwood. This is, believe it or not, a piece of eucalyptus. Which is quite well seasoned. This piece is a green piece. This was cut last year, and I chopped through some knots on it, as you can see. I'm careful to try and keep hitting the blade in the same spot, around about this area here. Chop that knot off, there's a knot there. That's it. Just chop through that knot. Just I've even given myself a blister. Look, I'm testing some stainless steel. Yeah, the stainless steel's testing my hand as well. Look. Let me take you into the workshop and talk a bit about this. Sorry, the stainless steel's been a bit slow coming on. I've been experimenting with stainless steel on and off for the last 2 or 3 years now, with different levels of success. I've always preferred working with O1. O1 is it's not the easiest of tool steels to treat, but it's fairly easy, and it requires a much lower temperature than what the stainless does. So anyway, fast forward to today, and I've got another knife now in my hand. This is made from a stainless steel known as Silver Fox 100. There's several things that I didn't realise you had to do. For example, you've got to preheat your kiln. You've got a target window of temperatures around about sort of 40 degrees C with SF100. So you've got a minimum temperature of 1050 degrees centigrade. 30 degrees window rather. You've got a minimum temperature of 1050 degrees centigrade, and you've got a maximum temperature of 1080 degrees centigrade. So I've experimented throughout that range, and I settled on bang in the middle, 1065. And then I did some more experiments where I soaked the steel for different lengths of time. I did half-hour soaks, and using my Rockwell tester, I could see that there was retained austenite, because over time, after I'd hardened the blades, over time they were getting harder and harder. So as the retained austenite was converting to martensite, it was affecting the hardness. And so I would pull the knives out, plate quench them, and find that I'd only be achieving a 58 or a 59 HRC from quench, and I thought that's very low. And then go and put the knife in a freezer, minus 30 degrees C, pull it out an hour or so later, and then suddenly you got 61 HRC. So that's the retained austenite converting to martensite. I'm not a metallurgist, I'm just a layman, so I don't profess to be anything special or clever on this. But I was also putting the knives originally into the kiln like that, cold. Obviously I was sealing them against oxygen. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I later found out that you're best to preheat the kiln, or the oven, and I preheated it, let it settle down to its austenitizing temperature. In my case it was 1065 centigrade. Then placed the knife into the kiln And at that point you can tell the temperature's robbed out. It goes, as the knife is heating up, it's taking the energy and it's absorbing it into the knife, and you'll see the figures, they drop down. And so I waited for those figures to come back and stabilise, and then I timed my soak time, and I went for a 15-minute soak time, because I read somewhere that a shorter soak time gives you less retained austenite, and the thickness of the blade, that needs about 12 to 15 minutes to thoroughly soak that heat up. So I tried oil quenching, which I was successful at, but I got some warps which I was able to get out in the tempering cycle. I tried a combination of oil quenching and plate quenching. I tried plate quenching using wrapped foil, and I wasn't quite getting the results I wanted, and I started to really get the results I wanted when I was using a product called Condursal Z1100. This product, it seals the blade and stops any decarburization, but it's got to be put on. You put it on very, very thin. There's hardly any of it on there. You've got to degrease the blade, put it on very, very thin, and it's got to go straight into that hot oven at 10,065 centigrade. It's no good if you put it in at a lower temperature, because something happens to it, it cracks, it lets oxygen through to the blade. But if you put it straight into the real hot oven, it just bakes on and it does what it says. And clean up afterwards was so simple, but it's not cheap. I mean, it's nearly 60 quid. A tin of that's 60 quid. So it's a bit of a convoluted thing I'm saying to you, but anyway, I'm happy with the results on this one knife. I have built a couple of little wisps. They're my small neck knife, and I'm happy with the results. I've done edge deflection tests, and there's virtually zero edge deformation when I'm giving it the edge deflection test on a brass rod, or even on a Bic lighter, a curved plastic of a Bic lighter. You can deflect the edge, and if there's any weakness in the heat treat, that will either cause the edge to fail to a chip, or it will cause it to fail to a roll, or a deflection which doesn't return. But all the deflections returned back to centre. I've been beating on the knife in the garden, through knots, through hardwood, and I have to give myself I've got no handle on the knife, so obviously it just dug in. But I spent a good 20 minutes to half an hour just battering on that one area there, and I haven't got any paper handy, but the results are it's still hanging on my fingernail, and it's still yeah, I can scrape fingernail off of it. I don't know if you can see that or not. So I'm gonna do some more heat treating. The blade as it looks after it's been cleaned up after strain relieving, and then degreased and dipped in Condursal. So it smells, it's got a very, very strong smell to it. So this takes about 10 minutes to quarter of an hour to harden, and then you can stick it in the kiln. So whilst that's hardening and setting, the kiln's obviously going up the temperature. So I'll bring it back when we're ready to put it into the kiln. Well, there's the blade in question. When it goes into this very hot kiln, you'll see some flame, and that's just the volatiles being burnt away from, I think it's basically from the little tip where there was a little drip at the end. But it's a very, very thin coating, and I was surprised at how effective it was. Anyway, it's seriously hot in there, so I'm going to stop the kiln now. The elements are no longer live, and just put the knife in. You'll see the heat. Oh, that is serious now. It's beginning to burn at the end. So recall, run, and that's now running that cycle again now, and you'll see, if you look at the display here, it should say a temperature. Now that's already gone down to 1007, so it will drop down as the heat is absorbed into that cold steel, and then it will start to come back up again. And when it gets back to 1065, that's when I do the 15-minute count from. We're almost up to time now, so I'm getting ready to turn the kiln off and bring that blade out. There we're there. That's 15 minutes soak time. Kiln is stopped. There's the blade. On there. On there. So that's now cooled down. The next blade is now in the kiln, waiting to heat up, and so that'll be another 20 odd minutes before that one comes out. So plenty of time for the plates to cool down in between. And there's our blade, which is cold. So that's now going to go into my freezer. So that's it. Next, that's it quenched and it's nice and flat. Now I'm going to stick it in the fridge, in the freezer rather, freeze it down to about -30 and leave it in there. When I did my Rockwell measurements, I noticed that it takes a little bit of time for it to make its full hardness, because there is a small amount of retained austenite. Apparently shorter soak times mean you get less retained austenite. So anyway, at long last, the first finished, well, I did finish a couple of tiny little wisp knives a few weeks back in the same steel, SF100, but I've had a, how can I say it, I think I tend to overcomplicate things to start off with. The heat treat is not necessarily that involved, that difficult, but you've also got to factor into the equation over the last 3 years my wife's been in hospital with a major heart operation. I'm very sad to say she's back in hospital now. She's gone back in today with ongoing issues, so I am a carer for her up to a point. I lost my 2 dogs. They both died a couple of years ago, and you go into a kind of a limp mode where you're at a level where you're producing what you're producing and having to sort of complicate matters anymore. I was just happy to continue with my O1. So I had 2 or 3 attempts with CPM 154 with varying results, and actually thinking back on it, those first heat treats, they weren't that bad really. They were just a bit hard. And then this is I've had 3 attempts with SF100 to get it right, and on the 3rd attempt I got it spot on. It's repeatable. I've got a repeatable heat treat. I can tell you exactly what the heat treat is. Pay attention if you want to copy it, because I don't mind sharing my information. In fact, some of the information I've gleaned myself off of the internet through searching and what have you. It's simply this. Regarding SF100, I preheat the kiln to 1065 degrees centigrade, let it get up to temperature, let it stabilise, and then the blades, as you saw, dipped in condersal to stop any decarb. When the condersal's cured, stick it into the kiln, shut the door, and wait for the temperature to come back up to 1065 degrees centigrade. Soak it for a quarter of an hour. Then bring it out, plate quench it, and then stick it in the freezer for a minimum of an hour. Longer doesn't seem to do any harm. And so when that's gone into the freezer, of course, then your next knife has gone into the kiln. And the thing is, to get the consistent results, you can only do one at a time, because by the time you've taken the knife out and you've plate quenched it, a lot of time's gone on, and you're going to get different results from blade to blade that way. But anyway, I've done now 7 blades, and they've all come out exactly the same. So I'm really pleased. And as I say, there's the results. Let's get the so there's the knife. Look, Levy Desert Ironwood. This was sent to me by Mark. Mark also got the pins, made the pins, had them sent to me. SF100. I know some of you are going to have questions now regarding cryo. Why did I choose SF100 in the end? Because I've been messing around with cryo, or rather a freeze cycle on CPM 154. Here I go, complicating things again. Now, I spoke to my steel suppliers, and they said to me, have you tried, hang on, let's get the camera to focus on me now. Have you tried SF100? You don't need a cryo or a cold cycle with that, and it will perform just as good as AEB-L. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you what I've been told. And so, as I alluded to in my video and the clips prior to this, that you've got a soak. I know that you've got, the longer you soak your steel, the more retained austenite you're going to get. So going for the short soak times and using this steel, it seems that you don't need to do a freeze cycle, and that's all I can say. So if anyone's more knowledgeable in the comments, then please feel free to leave your comments there and debate it amongst yourselves. But as I say, with the tests that I've done, I'm more than happy with this. I'm pretty sure it's going to hold up well, it's going to work exceptionally well, and I couldn't get it blunt. This isn't the knife I was testing, by the way. This is a hunter-gatherer. The knife I was testing was one of the classics that's currently in the workshop being built up. But yeah, so that's it. The first stainless is on the go. I'll be doing a lot more stainless from now on. Now I've got it all sussed and I understand it a bit better, and I'm comfortable doing it. So I think I'll leave it with you at that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.